Good evening, everyone. Yes. Yes. Om Parthaya Pradibodhidam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gradhidam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaidamrudavashinim Bhagavadim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudramarudastunanti Divaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopaniषदे Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pasyendi Yam Yogino Yasyantam na vidussura suraganah Devaya tasmai namaha. We will continue our discussion on the 11th verse of the 7th chapter. In the last session, somebody raised some questions about this dynamics of desire. It is a very important and sensitive subject. Can we actually live without desire? And we all normally speak in our everyday conversations. We normally talk about desire as something undesirable. I mean, to have a desire is something unspiritual, against the religious and spiritual morality. At the same time, the fact remains that there is nobody in the world without a desire. And not only that, it is impossible for us to live and work and succeed in life without desire. And Vedanta doesn't speak anything against the need to succeed. So Vedanta helps us to face this world and life and to confront the problems in life in a very intelligent, efficient manner. That's what Vedanta is all about. Now the question arises, is desire good or is it something undesirable? There is a very powerful statement in the Gita, and I can't deal with this subject better than by giving a brief description of this idea. It is na buddhivedam janayed ajnanam karma sangina. This is the statement in the Gita. This simple. Lord Krishna says, don't change the attitudes, the behavior patterns, the ideals that a normal person is pursuing in his life. Suppose you're working with some ideal, with a sense of goal, with a sense of purpose, with a definite plan. In short, with some desire. Gita tells you, or Lord Krishna tells us, don't change his mind, his attitudes. Don't tell him you should work without a desire. Don't tell him. That's very interesting. Ajnanam karma sangina means somebody who is working with a lot of ambition, a lot of sense of purpose. Let us say, with a strong, let us say, selfish desire to succeed, to have a good job, to accomplish something really worthwhile in life. Lord Krishna says, don't ask him. You should give up all your desire, all your sense of purpose and start working. He is strongly against it. Why? Because, first of all, it's a matter of our evolution. Now, let us come to Gita itself, the context of Arjuna's problem. Lord Krishna, remember, never tells Arjuna to practice karma yoga, to practice unselfish action as the first lesson. What he tells him first at the beginning of Gita is you should work with a definite goal, with a definite purpose, with a strong selfish desire. Now he was a soldier. His duty was to protect people, to protect good people from evil persons. That was his primary responsibility of a soldier. That was, you look at it, let us say policeman in modern times. Or let us say somebody working with the law enforcement. It is his duty or her duty to help the society, to help the normal persons, to save themselves from problems and troublemakers. So that person should work hard to do his duty. And if he cannot work without selfish desire, then you should work with selfish desire. So you find the first few statements called Loka Nyaya. Lord Krishna is talking from the standpoint of normal human discourse, normal human situations and needs. So Akitim Chabi Bhudani Gadaishyante Avyam. Again, go on quoting all these verses, which is more appropriate, let's say, well, facing an assembly of Sanskrit scholars. He goes on quoting, Lord Krishna is quoting, and what is he quoting? He is talking about normal human wisdom and responsibilities, work ethic. You should do your duty. If you don't do your duty, people will belittle you, they will ridicule you. Your reputation as a man of responsibility, as a man of duty will go down. That's what he says. Then Lord Krishna says next, after having taught the fundamental lessons of doing one's duty with a strong desire, with a sense of purpose, maybe with a selfish sense of purpose, with a lot of ego, let us say. Then he says, now you should learn to do your duty without a selfish purpose. So you can find that there is an evolution in ego. There is a progression in ego. So the first lesson is to make your ego, to make use of your ego for doing your duty. Second lesson, to do that duty with healthy ego, with refined ego. And Sri Ramakrishna says, ego who is employed for doing a good work, you should treat ego as a servant. You should not be the servant of your ego. Ego should be your servant. So that's a gradual evolution. So one should learn to do his or her duty without a selfish purpose. But that is again a matter of evolution. Now let us take another example. Normally, people will tell you, oh, I don't want any desire. I don't want any ego. Well, you watch him. Is he doing his duty properly? Is he performing his responsibility properly? And then does he say that I don't want ego? Then you should respect him. But if he's a lazy fellow who is complaining, who is bitter, who is jealous of those who succeed better than him, those who work with a selfish ego, working hard to succeed, and this fellow is complaining, then you should tell him, no, you should try to work like him. I shall give an example. Well, it is a very interesting real experience, real event that happened in one of Indian monasteries. Well, to be very frank, I was a witness of this. So I can say, long back, let us say. So one junior monastic member who has recently joined was telling, he's the head, the abbot of the ashram. You can easily learn the lesson. There cannot be a better demonstration of this dynamics of evolution of ego, or evolution of desire from selfish desire to sublime desire. So this young man was telling the abbot, it's normal, they are juniors, maybe 20, 21 years or maybe younger. Oh, Swamiji, he was talking about another monastic member who was somewhat senior to him. Oh, Swamiji, that person is very egoistic. He's always studying, he works hard, he studies. Of course, he has other responsibilities, but all the spare time he is devoting to studies, philosophy, history, different subjects. Then the abbot told him, is it so? You also study like that. You know the instruction the abbot gave to this complaining person, because the abbot understood this man was he was jealous of the other person who was working hard, who was maybe intellectually much more brilliant, much more capable, much better educated. So this fellow was a little jealous. Out of envy, he was complaining. Swami, he is very egoistic. He has selfish desire to become a scholar. Then that Swami told him, is that so? That's fine. You also work like him. That was the end of this man's problem. He never ever complained again. Now what does it mean? So when you listen to persons who tell you, oh, this man is very egoistic, he has a lot of selfish desire. If that person is a Jesus Christ or Buddha, you can tell him, yeah, that ego is bad. If the person is a very normal person, he may be most probably talking out of his intolerance of somebody else who may be doing better. So that means it is better to do one's duty with a selfish purpose than doing nothing. Now, but then Lord Krishna doesn't stop there. Then he says, but if you work very hard with a lot of selfish desire, there's a problem. Because it itself is self-defeatist. Because at some point you work hard, but you don't succeed, you're broken, you're shattered. This happens to every person. You can very easily, big businessmen, captains of industry, politicians, scientists, all of them you find. They achieve great things. Writers, artists, philosophers, novelists, all these people. With hard work, with a strong desire, they accomplish great things. But at some point, they come to a stage where they think, well, this is nothing. Because spiritually, they feel a kind of inner bankruptcy. At that time, well, Lord Krishna tells you, now you should practice Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga is for a person who is accustomed to doing work hard, doing his work properly, doing hard work, efficiency, all these qualities. It is not for the lazy person. Now, even in modern times, Mahatma Gandhi himself, quoting Gita, he mentions this point again and again. Ahimsa is for the weak. Ahimsa is for the strong, for the courageous, for the brave. Ahimsa, non-violence, is not for the weak. It is not for the timid. It is for the strong. It is for the brave. Like that, Karma Yoga is for a person who may be naturally hardworking, efficient, and accustomed to doing his duty properly. This is an important point to remember. So then what happens, there is a kind of graduation taking place, an evolution. As you practice hard work with a strong desire, if you are a sincere person with a selfish desire, then that sincerity will help you to evolve, to progress to the next stage of your spiritual evolution. Then one day you will realize, well, I have worked so hard, I have accomplished so much, but I am not happy. So there is something more to life. And then he is ready to practice Karma Yoga. He is ready to practice unselfishness. He is ready to practice absence of desire. So this is a very important point to remember. In fact, Ramanuja says in one quote, Ramanuja is an exponent of Visishtadvaita, he says, this is true in spiritual life also. At the beginning of your spiritual evolution, you can pray to God. You can demand Because it is God's duty to look after you, to answer your prayers, to fulfill your desires, even if selfish desire. But if you are sincere in your selfish devotion, then God Himself will give a hand and lift you to the next stage of evolution. He will make you pray without selfish desire. So Sakama Bhakti will become Nishkama Bhakti in Sanskrit language. It means devotion with desire will evolve to the next stage of evolution, devotion without desire. So this is an important point, remember. That means Gita is a very wonderful, unique work on spiritual psychology. Gita places a mirror right in front of you. So you can see all the dark spots that you have on your face. And you can see where you are trying to deceive yourself. Because self-deception is a problem. It's not a problem in certain religious philosophies where you put the whole burden on God, while God looks after all your needs to the exclusion of the rest of the humanity. But Gita is very secular. That is an important point. Gita is a religious work. It is also a wonderful work on secular psychology. So it places a mirror right in front of us. So you can see where we normally go wrong. So that is why the problem of self-deception and hypocrisy is always a problem in religious life. Hypocrisy and self-deception frequently happens in our subjective religious life. But Gita helps us to detect our own problems by placing a mirror in front of us. So our own creative and destructive behavior patterns become clear to us and gives us a maturity of attitude and outlook. So this is a very, very important point in the Gita. That's why, Balam Balavatam Kama Raga Vivarjitam. I am the strength of the strong, of the strong person who is totally free from selfish desire. That's here Kama implies selfish desire. Frequently English translations may not be able to do full justice to the original Sanskrit. You may need a whole paragraph. So frequently that's not always possible in different translations. So what the implication, what it implies is that the strength of the strong, well, let's say the strength of a great person who employs his strength at the service of others. The courage of the courageous person who uses his courage not for his selfish purpose, for the good of others. That is an expression of the divine. Dharma aviruddho bhudeshu kamosmi bharadashva. That is very important. Desire of a person who has a sublime desire. I gave the example. Let us say the ambition of a person. Well, I want to develop a vaccine that will be a remedy for all problems the world is facing. Well, if that person is a sincere person, that desire is an expression of the divine. In fact, Einstein had a little bit of this, but he discovered only after the atomic explosion, the atom bomb was experimented. Then he perhaps lamented, I could not have done it. So that's what happens. So the genius of a scientist, of a poet, or a musician, who use these skills, these extraordinary powers, for a noble purpose, they frequently develop a transcendental touch in their own chosen areas. That transcendental touch helps them to touch with their hands this sublime spiritual truth. Means they are able to connect with this spiritual truth. That is an expression of the divine. So I hope that it should be clear. If it is still not clear, you are most welcome to continue these questions. Of course, I mentioned this earlier. This is mentioned in so many scriptures. I give the example. Now we come to the 12th verse. Ye chaiva sattviga bhava rajasas tamasas chaye matta evedi tan vidhi natu aham teshu te mayi. What it means is, this sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna, they all proceed from me. They all exist in me, but I am not in them. That is, the Lord is the master of these three gunas. Because the diversity of different experiences, the diversity of the varieties of human experiences, of human temperaments, are all due to these three gunas, the interplay of the sattva guna, rajo guna and tamo guna. They all proceed from the Lord, means because these three gunas constitute what we normally understand life in this world. That is the totality of human experience at the empirical level. Not at the spiritual level, at the empirical level is constituted by these three gunas, the interplay. That's why you can find change of mood, change of temperaments, change of characteristics among different human beings. The same family you find 5 children, 5 totally different characteristics, which actually defy the principles of genetics. You can find all because of these three variants, the three types of human temperaments and characteristics. The next 2 verses deal with one important idea in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, and also one strange reality that we all face in our life. That is Maya. So you find Tevid Gunamayai Mai Bhavaihi Ebis Sarvamidam Jagat Mohidam Nabhi Janadi Mayamebhi Paramavayam Daivi Shesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Durettiya Mamevaye Prapadyandi Mayam Edam Tarantide. So what is Maya is mentioned here. So before coming to the subject, I shall explain, try to give a layman's understanding of what Maya is. It's a very interesting principle in Vedanta. Of course, sometimes, people equate this to the totality of empirical universe. There are people who try to explain this in the light of modern physics, which I am not interested in, because frequently I believe if you try to explain all Vedantic and spiritual ideas in the light of modern science, it is actually all the great saints and sages and philosophers of ancient times are lining up on the doorsteps of a physicist. Please put your signature here so that let us survive. I don't think an Aristotle or a Socrates or a Shankaracharya or a Buddha will need the signature of approval from an Einstein or a Newton. So I won't insult the spiritual and philosophical tradition by denigrating them as pleading, clinging supplicants for approval from modern science. So that's okay. Now coming to the subject. What is Maya? Maya, of course, I won't go deeper into this point. Is time-space causation constitute the fabric of Maya. That is a very popular a tendency among people. Time, space causation. That everything that's limited in the finite world, it is Maya. So anyway, having said that, I will come to the subject. What is Maya? In real life, we can understand Maya. There are certain imponderables in our life, certain unanswered questions which are not yet answered, questions for which we are not able to find a satisfactory answer, explanation, something that defies human logic. Now, why this happens, there is no answer to the question why. We know the answer to this question, to how, because it happens in our life. I frequently, in my lectures, so many times in earlier sessions, I have tried to explain this. The conflict between the logic as we understand in science and mathematics and the logic that actually plays out in our real life. Now, let us say in physical life or in science and mathematics, 2 plus 2 is always 4. So this equation rigidly follows a logical pattern. It never changes. 2 plus 2 is 4. It cannot be anything else. There's a logical inevitability as a result, that is 4. But in life, it doesn't happen. Sometimes you find some very good person. We know very well certain persons. We know them right from their birth. Extremely good persons going through so many difficulties. And certain persons who maybe this is the opposite of this, having a good time. There is a logical inconsistency. Or you may help a person, try to help him in so many different ways. And normally, a cause should produce a predictable result. That is the logic. But this doesn't happen in real life. You help a person in so many ways, that person becomes your worst enemy. I don't think there is anybody in the world who has not faced this problem. And a person whom you have never helped, he happens to be a great friend of yours. Now, here you find the logic is different in life than what it is in mathematics or physics or chemistry, where if you put together certain chemicals, you can predict the result. There is a logic you can anticipate without mistake. Now, why this happens? So there is an unknown, unpredictable, imponderable thing. That is one of the manifestations of Maya that functions in the world. And this Maya has got 2 dimensions. One is, it helps you. And according to our tradition, the philosophy, Maya sometimes is a great help. If you, for example, let us say, if you have a strong desire to meditate, to help a person, to do something for good for others, to practice certain noble ideals, that is one kind of Maya. It's called Vidyamaya. It's called Vidyaya. Vidyamaya means the positive dimension of Maya. Vidya means knowledge, positive, something that liberates you. Then there's another kind of Maya which binds you, which actually gets you entangled. It is called Avidya Maya. So selfishness, let us say, I give the example, Lakshachudam, I give the example of a ball that you throw from the top of a staircase. Like that, human mind also slowly falls. selfishness, selfish desires, greed, selfish ambitions, all function like a ball that you have thrown from the top of the ladder or staircase. It never stops till it hits the ground. So when we are entangled, when we are attached, when we are infatuated to various worldly ambitions and worldly goals and sometimes undesirable tendencies, then that will cause the fall, the degradation of the mind, the disintegration of our morality and our mental attitudes. Like the ball that slowly falls down the staircase without stopping till it hits the ground floor. Like that, it leads to bondage. It is binding. It is called avidya maya. So there are two dimensions of maya, which Sri Ramakrishna talks about. So I can explain this in the light of this particular verse. Tribhi gunamayai bhavaihi ebi sarvamidam jagat. So these three states, these three gunas, sattva-guna, rajo-guna, tamo-guna, these conflicting three gunas actually function as the interplay of this phenomenon we call maya. It becomes vidya maya, it becomes positive maya, it becomes something, a liberating ideal when it is dominated by sattva-guna. It becomes avidya maya, it becomes a cause of bondage when it is dominated by rajo-guna and tamo-guna. I explained this last time. Sattva-guna, rajo-guna, tamo-guna. Sattva-guna is characterized by maturity, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, serenity, and so on. Rajo-guna is characterized by a proactive temperament, dynamism, enthusiasm, ambition, a sense of selfish goal to be achieved, total dedication to attain the selfish goal. And tamo-guna is characterized by the person we referred to at the beginning of the class, the man who complains, see, that person is working very hard and he is very egoistic, he wants to be a scholar. This fellow is lazy, he is jealous, he is inactive. That person's temperament is an example of tamo-guna. So it's always better to have rajo-guna than tamo-guna, and it's always better to have sattva-guna than rajo-guna. This is important. Sattva-guna is the top. A person with sattva-guna can be very active, can be very efficient, just like a person who is endowed with rajo-guna. But he can be active without selfishness. He can be dynamic without attachment. So that is the greatness of sattva-guna. So when a person is endowed with sattva-guna, what he will do? He will try to think with the purpose of human life. He will try to think of higher ideas, and those tendencies, that mean tendency to connect with higher ideas, maybe practice of meditation, that will give him a spiritual sense, a sense of spiritual common sense, spiritual wisdom and maturity. So that is an example. Now we come to the subject. And Sri Ramakrishna says that this avidya maya and vidya maya both function in our life. I want to quote this from Sri Ramakrishna's own teachings. He says, for example, he says, you may feel 1,000 times that it's all magic, but you are still under the control of Divine Mother. You cannot escape. You are not free. You must do what she makes you do. A man attains Brahmajnanam, spiritual wisdom, only when it is given to him by Adya Shakti, the Divine Mother. So the tendency to turn to the spiritual wisdom is characteristic of Vidya Maya, the positive. And the opposite direction is the result of the influence of Avidya Maya. Now, it's a magic. There is a magician equation. Actually, it comes from Shankaracharya's commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. It's a very psychological and philosophical analogy. It is the analogy is taken from this mythical legend from Indian history. Is called the Indian rope trick. Now, in case many of you ever get away with the impression that it's pure myth, you can remember Indian rope trick has been mentioned by many European travelers who visited India in the 18th and 19th centuries. And there are two books in which some European travelers traveling all over India actually describes what they themselves saw happening in one of the states of India. Maybe I think it is one of those sciences. Again, it's nothing occult about it. It is a science which perhaps which is lost forever. Many of these ancient knowledge systems were lost completely because those who were proficient in these ancient methods, maybe magic or whatever it is, either they were no longer, and those manuscripts which they preserved to transmit this wisdom for succeeding generations were also destroyed. So the story is taken from Indian rope trick. It is something like this, a magician comes to the court of a king and immediately he declares, the king asked him to play magic. So he plays this magic. So this man declares, there is a war going on in the heavens. So there is a SOS. I have to go to heaven, I have to participate in this war, I have to help the devas, the good persons, against the bad persons. And he is called and he participates in this battle. And then there's a battle going on. All these remember, all these are the wrong, the delusions. All these are the thoughts and experience of the person who are deluded by this magic. I remember, in case you can, those of you who can read the life of Houdini, the Italian great magician, he also talks about this sort of thing which he heard from persons, and he doesn't dismiss this as mere myth or anything. So that's a different subject. Now coming to the subject, so he deludes the persons who are assembled in the court into thinking that there is a war going on in the heavens. People, at least for some time, they're deluded into thinking this totally false myth. A war going on, he is requested to go to heavens, and he throws a thread into the air, and he climbs up and disappears, and after some time his own body cut into pieces falls down, and dead bodies fall from the heavens. The battle is over, and after some time this man, now if everything is okay, and you find a magician standing there intact, and then people realize it is all magic. Now what Sri Ramakrishna says is, the magician is true, the magic is not true. The magic is pure delusion. That's an important point. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, magician is true, but the magic is false. Gita says, if you concentrate on the magician, you will not be deluded by the magic. That is true. Magicians won't normally allow somebody standing on the top of the gallery observing him. He will ask them to come down because he may be able to detect he won't be subjected to delusion. That's a belief, whatever it is. So that's why Shankaracharya says, Indro maya vipururuvayate sutehi naki maya vinam sutram akashe nikshipya tena sayudhamaruhya chakshudgojarada matitya yuddhena khandasaschinnam padidam punaruthidam chapasyadam takrita mayad sarta chintaya maduro bhavadi tathayvayam mayavina sutra prasarana sama sushupta swapnadi vikasa tad aruda mayapi samascha tat savapraknya tajisadihi etc. Sutra tadaarudhabhyam anya paramartha mayavi sa eva bhumishto maya chenna adrishyamana eva sthita. I am not reading further or quoting further. What it means is, those who are now free from this magic, after the show is over, when they look, they find this magician standing right on the floor. Bhumishto means he is standing on the earth. He has not gone to the heavens or anyone. Then they realize it is all magic. Similarly, God is the magician. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. You focus on God. You concentrate on magician, then you will not be deluded. But if you concentrate on magic, then you will not see the magician. You cannot see magic and magician together. If you see the magician, you will not see the magic. Similarly, if a person is completely devoted to God, that complete devotion to God will help a person to escape from being entangled in this magic, which is this life, which is worldly life. The pain and pleasure, the good and bad, for some time happy, then unhappy, again being happy. And every moment when there is happy experience, you identify with that happiness. After some time when there is unhappiness, you identify with that unhappiness. Again this game continues. Why? Because we are focusing, we are concentrating on magic. As Lord Krishna says, don't concentrate on the magic, concentrate on magician. That's why he says, Mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantiti. Those who devote themselves to me, means if you have got a higher spiritual ideal. See, it's difficult for us to speak in modern times about surrendering to God, because God has got a very bad name, very bad reputation, unfortunately. But the God we are talking about in Gita is totally different from that strong man God, the anthropomorphic Hulk standing above the clouds. The God idea mentioned in the Gita is the divine reality, is an anthropomorphic dimension of this divine reality, is compassionate to everyone, who doesn't even care whether you believe in him or not. Vedantic God is not so desperately weak as to depend upon your recognition of his existence. You deny God. The God idea in Gita won't bother even if you deny him, because his existence is not dependent upon your acceptance or your recognition. But if we live according to some higher spiritual ideal, you find many people who may not be going to a temple or a church or any place of worship, but living a great ideal. There are many. Buddha himself did not believe in God in the conventional sense of the term, but he was a great spiritual man. So, what it means is, those who are devoted to some great spiritual ideal, what happens to them? Mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite, means that is the 14th verse. They are saved from this entanglement of Maya. That is the statement here. So, in real life, we can say Maya can be defined as some kind of a conflict between what we aspire for and what our mind is willing to cooperate with. Mind may not be willing to follow or to cooperate with us if we try to follow a higher ideal. This conundrum, this paradox, this inherent conflict can be an expression of avidya maya. But, as Sri Ramakrishna says, the same maya has a positive dimension. If a person takes a strong decision, as I mentioned, sublime desire, suppose he takes it wrong, well, I will read scriptures, I will live an ideal life, I will follow certain disciplines in life. There actually you are finding an expression of the Vidya Maya. So Maya is not entirely wrong or bad. Maya is the name which cannot be named. That's why Shankaracharya says, Shankaracharya's definition is classic. Swamiji actually verbally translates Shankaracharya's definition of Maya is given in Viveka Chudamani. Sannapi asannapi bhuyatmigano, bhinnapi abhinnapi bhuyatmigano, sangapi anangapi bhuyatmigano, makhadbhuda anirvachaniyeruva. So the definition for Maya is that it is beyond definition. Why it is beyond definition? To be able to define, you should be able to say it is this and not that. That is what definition amounts to. It is with parts or it is without parts. It is real or it is unreal. It is existence or it is non-existence. Or maybe a combination of both. It is compact or it is divided. There are different ways of defining. But Maya cannot be defined because even this definition is an attempt that you make when you are within the realm of Maya. To be able to define, you should be beyond Maya. And when you are beyond Maya, then Maya doesn't bother you. You don't care for what it is because you know it is ultimately, or at the end of the day, Maya is absolutely a non-factor. It is not something to be bothered at all because it is neither real, because when you are free from Maya, you understand it is not real. But it is not unreal because when you are within Maya, it is not unreal, it is real. So it is something that is real when you are within its power. It is unreal when you are beyond its power, beyond its power of entanglement. So that is the definition of Maya. It is Mahadbhuda, it is a great wonder. Anirvachaniruva, it is of the nature of non-definability, indescribability, inexplicability. It puts a veil on what is real. So in place of the reality, you see something else. So Vedanta says, avarana, viksheva. Avarana means the veil, the cover. Viksheva means projection of the unreal. Something else is projected in place of what it is. So this is all about Maya. So if it's a very important subject. If you have got any doubt, you can ask questions later. Perhaps now we can have interactions. You are most welcome. Yeah.
Swamiji?
Yeah.
This is Mark speaking.
Yeah, most welcome.
Can you equate or say that duty
You can raise your question. I hope everyone can hear right now.
Is duty the same as Dharma?
Or duty is the same as dharma. Yeah. Duty is one expression of dharma. Dharma is a higher idea. You say, so dharma is closer to the idea of duty as we understand in English. So dharma, one's own dharma. Because duty is an expression of dharma. So duty in the context of a person's own obligation, or dharma in the context of one's obligation can be called duty. Yeah. Dharma as understood in the context of a person's obligation to different situations is duty. Yeah.
What if someone is unsure of what their duty is or their Dharma?
Yeah. So one way to understand duty is according to our own inherent characteristics, our responsibilities, our obligations, and our fitness. All these are different factors that define our duty. So that's why one important definition in Gita is Swabhava Niyatam Karma. Certain aptitudes, certain characteristics, demands and obligations in terms of our qualifications, in terms of the social obligations under which we are functioning or living, all these define duty. So a person who is performing duty as a dharma, one indication is that he will feel a kind of inner tranquility and peace and completeness and contentment. That will indicate whether what he is doing is duty or not, so dharma or not. So dharma means one's own duty. So a doctor, let us say a doctor who is working in a hospital, that is his duty, defined by his obligation, his qualification, his fitness, and in terms of what society expects him to do, and that is the best way in which he can justify his existence in the world. So there is so dharma, his duty is to work as a doctor. Like that. So I am just giving an example. So the idea of duty can be understood in the context of obligations, fitness, one's own qualifications, and demands from society, and also what gives you an inherent feeling of contentment. That's the most important criterion. There are certain things that we do, and when we do that in a certain way, we feel a sense of total contentment. I can give an example. Suppose a doctor feels, well, he has practiced for many years. Now he wants to look for something else, retirement, and maybe devote his rest of his lifetime to study scriptures or something else, let us say. His dharma changes. So there, because he feels that now it is enough for me, I will get contentment by switching my duty to something else which is more spiritually rewarding. So you can find, so the most important criterion is it gives you a feeling of inherent satisfaction or contentment. That is what it implies.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pranam Maharaj, this is Saugata.
Yeah.
So I have a question on the Maya part.
Yeah. Okay.
So how is it that everybody experiences the same Maya? Like if I am looking at a car, and I point the car, so you are also looking at the same car, and both of us seeing the same Maya. They are not different.
No, car
exactly.
is car is not necessarily Maya. Car becomes a Maya. Suppose you already have a wonderful car of your own. And then when you drive along, let's say, a car markets, then you want to buy a new car. Every day you want to buy something new. Then car becomes a Maya. If you have a car that you use for driving to reach your place, to reach your office, car is not a Maya. Nothing is a Maya unless it becomes a bondage. It becomes an entanglement. And that is an expression of Maya in its negative dimension. That is avidya Maya. Maya related to ignorance. So remember this. Nothing in this world is necessarily Maya. Car is not a Maya necessarily. Not at all. Let us say, suppose you have a wonderful vehicle, an ambulance, let us say. You use it for, let's know, this corona crisis, and you're running a company of ambulance vehicles. And then the ambulance is not Maya really. It becomes Vidya Maya. Why? Because it helps you to do something good. And that nobility, that generosity, that kindness with which you do something good, using the same car, actually is an expression of Vidya Maya. Because it liberates you from the entanglement of negative Maya. Because it opens the door to our own evolution to a higher consciousness. So an object need not necessarily a Maya. The way we look at it is what makes it Maya, really speaking. That's an important point, remember. For a king, for a generous king, wealth is not Maya. For a greedy person, it may be Maya. Because it entangles him, it binds him. But for a very wealthy person who uses his wealth for the good of others, who is not at all greedy or selfish, for him this wealth is not Maya. That's an important point, remember. We discussed this earlier, Yeah, it's how we look at different things. That's what really defines whether it is an entanglement, it's a bondage, or it is a road to liberation. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Maharaj, there's a question from YouTube by Nanjunda Somayaji.
Yeah.
Pranam Swamiji, the way you talked about Maya is similar to Brahman, the reality. How then we differentiate Maya from the reality of Brahman?
Yeah. I'll tell you. So Maya, I will try to explain this by the two words that constitute this word. It's not okay. Ma actually, it is a negative, it indicates negation of something. Ma vadatu, don't speak. Ma gachatu, don't go. So you find it's an indication of, ya is a pronoun. So you don't use a pronoun unless there is an entity in front of you. So it is there, but it's really not there. Maya appears to be real so long as we are within its power. But Maya is recognized and realized to be unreal when we are free from it. So it is different from Maya, different from Brahman. Brahman is anirvachaniya because it is vacham agochara. It is beyond words. It is beyond description, beyond understanding, beyond, it is a sarva pramana avadhi, beyond the reach of the tools of epistemology, beyond all pramanas. It is the absolute reality which cannot be defined in words. Maya is non-definable because it is neither real in the absolute sense nor unreal in the absolute sense. Because it is neither real in the absolute sense nor unreal in the absolute sense, it is neither sat nor asat. It is Maya. Sannapi asannapi bhayatmigano, that is the first line of Shankaracharya's definition. Now, Brahman is Sat. What is Sat? Sat is the absolute reality that remains the same in the past, present and future. It is beyond the six changes. It is Shatvikara Adida, Trikala Adida and Avasthatraya Abhadida. It is beyond the differences in the triple levels of awareness of Jagrat state, Swapna state and Sushupti state. It is beyond definition because it is the reality that is beyond time, space and causation. That is beyond Sadvikara, the six changes. But Maya is non-definable because it is neither real nor unreal. But Brahman is real. The real is the R capital. Why? Because it is the absolute reality which defies the changes in the past, present and future, and which defies the changes in the Avasthatraya, the triple levels of consciousness. So that's the difference. Brahman is the only absolute reality beyond description, beyond words, beyond pramanas. Maya, on the other hand, is not definable because it is not real. Why? The moment you understand, the moment you get Brahmajnanam, Maya is not there. At the same time, so long as we are within his power, so long as you don't get Brahmajnanam, Maya is real. As if it is real, in that sense. In that sense, it is Anirvachaniya. So, Anirvachaniyatvam of Brahman and Anirvachaniyatvam of Maya are two different types. I mean, the non-definability of Brahman and the non-definability of Maya are of two different kinds, two different categories, two different qualities. Okay. Yeah.
Maharaj, there's one more question from YouTube by Ashnil Pratap.
Yeah.
Swamiji, what does sincere mean? Who is a sincere person? Sincere.
Yes, sincere. So sincerity can be defined as something that you do with an open mind. It gives you a feeling of real inner lasting contentment. So it is called Charidarthada and Kridagrityada. Kridarthada and Kridagrityada, both are seen. Kridarthada means when we do something, out of that action, you feel a kind of inner contentment. And only a spiritual activity can produce this kind of lasting contentment. So that is the definition, it's a criterion to decide whether a person is sincere or not. So thank you. Today we exceeded the time, but that is good, I believe. Anyway, okay. And thank you especially for those who put questions. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Yeah.